Hi there, and welcome back to Cancer's Casket. So, just this Tuesday, I had another blood work appointment, and I figured what better thing to talk about than how and where a needle pierces my skin whenever I get a blood work appointment. So, today, we're going to be talking about access points. To start off, I'm pretty sure everyone's been to the doctor before and had some blood drawn, so you'll probably recognize these needles. These are your standard needles. These are the ones you'll get whenever you get blood drawn or need an IV hooked up in hospital, which they usually poke you in the inner elbow or in the back of the palm. However, for patients who need to get frequent blood works and fluids in and out quickly, you'll get what is called a central line. Now, in my case, I've had two different types of central lines, starting off with the very classy PICC line. A PICC, or a peripherally inserted central catheter, is when a tube, better known as a catheter, is threaded into a vein in the arm, where it goes until the catheter reaches the entrance of the heart. And on the other end of the tube, depending on what your needs are, there will be between 1 and 4 different ends sticking out of the arm, where fluid, chemo, and blood can be drawn quickly, avoiding the hassle of being poked repeatedly. I actually found quite a neat diagram of what veins are used depending on what is needed, which I find quite interesting. I first got my PICC line about 1 to 2 weeks after starting treatment. And let me tell you, walking around with a tube sticking out of your arm was definitely one of the weirdest feelings I've ever had. However, one of the biggest problems with the PICC is that it has a lot of drawbacks. Firstly, since it's essentially a hole in your arm with a tube sticking out of it, it is way easier to get an infection with it. And it has to have weekly cleanings and dressing changes to keep it healthy. And it's also because of the fact that there are tubes sticking out of your arm, you're gonna also get some limitations with that. To start off, you're not gonna be allowed to play any physical sports, since one touch and the whole thing could probably come apart. Showering becomes a chore since you have to cover it up with plastic and water resistant tape just so it doesn't get wet. And by that logic, forget about even going to the pool. Then, there's also the not so discreet fact of, well, having tubes stick out of your arm, which means people will notice it. Unless you're wearing a sweater or some sort of long sleeve, but even then, tubes tend to stick out and make a weird bulge in the arm. But the most jarring thing of all is the thought of it getting caught onto something and ripping out. I'm being 100% serious. This is something they tell you to be wary about and look out for. I've had nurses before tell me stories of little kids with them that just decide to look at it and rip it out. Yeah, definitely not the greatest thought to have stuck in your head. So the pick is far from perfect. Yeah. And honestly, it's mainly really used for like weeks to months of use. So eventually, it was about time that I had to get myself an upgrade.